All right. Hello, everyone out there on Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine. I have the pleasure of serving as the executive director of Historic Athens. We are a 52-year-old nonprofit celebrating and conserving community heritage here in Athens, Georgia. We are so thankful that you've tuned in today at 1 o'clock for this afternoon's edition of This Moment in History, COVID-19 in Athens, Georgia. For those of you that have not watched the program before, we want to let you know something. This is not just an episode for you to experience. This is also something you can contribute to and participate with. So if you have a question or a comment as we're having today's discussion, if you have a word of encouragement for Keith Keppner, today's guest, just comment below the video, and when the time is right, I can share it on the screen. We can address it live and make it part of this discussion. There's a reason why that's important. At the conclusion of this series, once we've concluded all 55 episodes, today being number 30, we will actually be able to donate this archive to our local libraries and research institutions. That will enable future generations of citizens and researchers to go back and see what Athens was like at this moment. When you contribute that comment, that question, that word of encouragement, that becomes part of that historic record. So we'd love for your comments and your experiences to be part of today's discussion. So please include it. Before we get to today's guest, we want to thank today's sponsor. So this week, all 5 episodes of this week has been made possible by our friends at the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. So to David Bradley, to Lindsay Brannon, to everybody at the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce, we really appreciate the work you're doing to organize local businesses, give people the clarity and information they need at this difficult and uncertain time. We also really appreciate your investment in allowing us to document and explore Athens history in real time. So thank you to our friends of the Chamber. For those of you that are interested in more about historic Athens, about halfway through today's program, we'll let you know a little bit more about how you can get plugged in if you're someone that just loves Athens, Georgia, and loves history. But for now, we have to do the most important thing, which is bring on today's guest. Today's guest is Keith Keppner. For many of you, he is going to be no stranger. You may have encountered him as owner and operator and coach at Keppner Boxing. He is a phenomenal leader. He also has his own program that I've had the pleasure of serving as a guest on, where he provides inspiration and context and all kinds of useful data for those of us that are out there trying to navigate this difficult community and world. So we're going to go and bring him on, let him introduce himself, talk a little bit about his backstory and his relationship to Athens. So allow me one moment. I'm going to go ahead and switch things, and then we will bring on Keith. So one moment here. All right. And here we are. All right, Keith, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being on the program.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's my pleasure.
Of course. So, Keith, as I mentioned, you've fast become a familiar face around Athens, Georgia. Many people who never thought they'd find themselves in an environment like your gym have gotten to experience boxing and the benefits of it. Not only the physical benefits, the mental benefits. I know even a retired professor in my department has gotten treatment for Parkinson's by being able to work in your gym. But yeah, there may be people out there that are viewing this today. Yep. There may be people that are viewing this today or maybe in future generations that haven't had the chance to meet you. So could you take a moment just to introduce yourself and outline your relationship with the Athens community?
Yeah, so I'm Keith Keppner. I was born at what was Athens Regional Hospital back in 1987. I've been in Athens all my life, minus about 2 years I lived in Mexico. Grew up right over the county line in Jefferson, off Jefferson Road. And yeah, so I went to Montessori school, went to St. Joseph's, went to Clark Central High School for about the equivalent of a semester before I dropped out from having health issues, and then got into boxing largely because of my father, or solely because of my father. And then that led to me starting and founding Keppner Boxing here in Athens.
You know, Keith, I guess I should have been able to tell from the gray in my beard, but I think because you have this tough accent and, obviously enough toughness to back it up, I've in my mind always just given you like an older brother status, but it's interesting to find out that you're an 87 kid. That's interesting. So So you have this long relationship with Athens, and now that relationship has really ripened because you are now, I think, of all the entrepreneurs that have really made a name for themselves in the Athens area over the last few years, you really come to mind as being in that top tier of folks that have made it, and not only made it, but made it through growth, through multiple locations. Can you tell us some about your business and how it's blossomed over the last few years?
Yeah. So we started back in 2013, and like you mentioned, we've relocated to Baxter Street, and then after that to where we are now, corner of Barnett Shoals and Lexington, and because of growth. But it's one of those things that it's like, yeah, you see other businesses come and go. Other people that were around when you started aren't around. Um, and it's an interesting thing to see. And it's interesting to be a part of that community of wonderful entrepreneurs that have been around in Athens for years and come and gone and everything else. And yeah, it's a real interesting process. And it's one of those things that, like we all know, we can't all be fair weather sailors.
Right.
It's it truly, like, the best analogy, I know a lot of people ask me this other times besides these current times, but to me the best analogy is sailing, because it's like, even though I'm not a big fan of sailing, but it's like, man, you gotta know how to like ride when it's easy. Anyone can do that, but then when it gets hard, that's when you actually have to learn how to actually sail, and you can't just like throw your hands up and abandon ship. I mean, you can if you don't choose to be on ship anymore, but man, if you want to keep that ship, you better stay on. So it's been a process of that, and also me ensuring that my health is good and my family's health. My wife is actually having a pretty extensive back surgery this Tuesday, and that was put off for a while, even before like all this stuff happened. But then it was put off even further. So stepping forward into those challenges, it's a lot of things, but it's all good in the process. All good practice.
You mentioned your wife. She's a really phenomenal person. You have, a unique situation where you're, at least from what I saw, it seems like your co-business owner, your partner, your
Yep.
co-coach is also your partner at home.
Yep.
How does that work? I know that's the unique thing that not every couple has.
Yeah, it's ultra challenging, and how it works, like how I suppose any good partnership works with anything, is that we share the same principles, and the same values, even though we're very different. I was raised by an atheist father and an agnostic mother, and she comes from a Jewish background from California. She's very detail oriented, very good at saving and things like that, and I'm very macro and very good at spending and trying to be bigger than what I am. And both of those two traits really feed to each other perfectly, right? Because that's one of the cliches on the entrepreneurial side of the thing. It's like, get a partner that makes up for what you lack, right? So
now I'm interested. You mentioned how you were born in Athens. That's something I don't get to claim. Unfortunately, I'll never get to be an Athens native. I didn't get here till I was 5, so I lose that title. But you're a true Athens native. You were educated in local Athens schools. You obviously know the Athens community in an intimate way, and the way that if someone else had tried to open a gym at the age you did, but had not had that background, it might have been more of a challenge. How did your understanding of Athens and your background in Athens help you stay afloat over these last few years?
yeah, well, that's a good point. It's interesting. It's been like with any situation, right? If we paint it black or white, it's not an accurate picture. It's been interesting because, so for instance, I was taught by my father, but my father specialized, he's a clinical psychologist, PhD in neuroscience, and but he's also a professional boxing coach. And he approached boxing purely from making professional athletes. That was his goal. He wanted to make world champions, and that's purely how he approached it. So anything else that came along with that, like with what we do, which is the fitness side, the skill side, maybe the personal growth side, that was maybe a happy secondary point to what he was doing. Whereas what we've done and have been doing, and it took a couple years to kind of get this mission right, but is, to positively impact as many people as we can with boxing and everything else. And so it comes from two different sides. So it was honestly when I started, it helped me get some initial momentum, obviously because of being mentored by someone who's been around boxing for 60 years. But and then people he knew and everything else helped me get in the door and stuff with people in like Georgia and also around the nation with pro fighters. But then it also became this thing of like overcoming this perception, which is just ubiquitous with boxing and with boxing gyms. That's why we don't even technically call our Keppner Boxing a boxing gym now. We call it a facility because it's because that boxing gym has that knee-jerk reaction of like you think of Mickey in the Rocky movies. He's sleeping under the ring and he's just waiting for a champion and he's got nothing else going on in his life. And where it's like really we've completely shifted that. And I know like through the time that you've trained with us, you've probably seen some of the shift. And so it's like I tell people now and have for a while that I could have the most talented boxing or pro boxer potential come through the door, and if they don't fit our culture, if they don't fit our values and our core principles as a facility and as a community, it's just not going to work. And so and I'm happy to say that because a lot of people will crush, specifically with boxing and with athletes, they'll crush their practice or their business by trying to placate to one individual that's like their golden horse, but it's never worth it.
Yeah, if we have time later in the program, I do want to touch on your your deep love for the Rocky movies and everything it's done for boxing. Because I know that I do think it's useful, and when we talk about the philosophy, because for part of the advantage of this program, obviously we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about COVID-19, as we should. I know it's a topic that you've been working really diligently as a local community leader to share online your perspective and share information.
Yeah.
But I also think that one of the benefits of this program has proven to be that folks who are curious about community leaders who work in different sectors get to understand how those sectors work. And I think that boxing is, and what you do, even talking about the difference between a gym and a facility, I think it's so commonly misunderstood. Before coming to train with you for the year or two that I got to spend with you, I had worked with other trainers who I think fed more into the popular perception of boxing. I had one who was great along your lines, but I'd also had some other environments where it was more of this like get mad,
savage attitude,
tiger type, thing. And you take a very different approach. And let's go ahead and just get into that for a second. So can you talk about your philosophy on boxing and what potential customers, or I'm not sure what word you'd use, folks
clients,
that are coming
clients,
clients.
Yeah.
For folks that are coming to be coached by you, what should they expect on your philosophy on boxing?
Yeah, well, philosophy on boxing is, so when they talk about the sweet science or the art of boxing, I think art is a more accurate description. But it's the art of when you actually compete with it as a sport, of hitting and not being hit and minimizing how much you get hit. And people tend to forget that. But what's funny about boxing, as with all pro sports, it was actually the first pro sport in the history of the world. But it's not like with all pro sports. There's a entertainment element, which can run into problems though for the health of individuals. It's like there's a dear friend I have she's now a fight doctor, but she's also our pediatrician. She has two practices, Andrea Hill, and she's shared her story a lot, so I feel free sharing it here. But I had the fortune of meeting her right before her late husband committed suicide. And he was a Muay Thai fighter, and he fought about 30 or so pro fights, got a lot of damage, and he liked the thrill of fighting and getting hit, but he didn't have a consistent coach throughout his career to make sure that he was kept safe, and just a couple other things. And so eventually he was sparring one time at only about maybe the age of, I think, like mid-30s, and got hit, got concussed, and had post-concussive syndrome, and kind of had a lot of anger over the next couple of weeks. She didn't even know that happened until someone told her afterwards. And then it culminated one Sunday night where they got in an argument, and he pushed her and looked ashamed and walked outside and took his own life. Wow. So having some of those experiences and getting an opportunity and be blessed to work through that with her and be a part of her process of overcoming that, and also learning more, and also knowing through, as you get out of being an athlete and start into the realm of being a coach, you realize that it's truly about who someone is becoming in the process. So if somebody, through coming into our facility to just learn boxing for fitness purposes, if they're becoming better health and everything else in the process, there's ways they could do that wrong, right? You could starve yourself and become anorexic and lose weight,
Right.
but not be healthy and not become probably who you actually want to become. Or if you maybe come in and you want to maybe do some competition, and maybe it grows your ego too much, and then you start behaving in ways that are not healthy for you or the people around you, then obviously that's not becoming who, your best self with it. And so I think really almost like that, you know who John Wooden is?
Mm-mm.
So he's the famed UCLA basketball coach, and a lot of coaching is based off of the work he did throughout the 70s and whatnot. But he said that his best team ever that he had was not the team he had that had like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, whatever his name is. I don't follow basketball, but all these great players that he said the best team he ever had was a team that they weren't blessed with all the talents, but they literally maximized everything that they could do. And he said that was the best team he ever had. And so really that whole message, though, of just like, who are you becoming in the process? And that's what we're all about as a facility. Just constant and never-ending growth, obviously in the ways that contribute and are truly beneficial long-term. And boxing just happens to be the vehicle. Like a lot of people, they'll find growth through art. They'll find growth through music, and so it's just another way for growth.
Keith, I just saw a wave of folks enter the video. And so I just want to say, if you're somebody who's just tuned in, we're talking to Keith Keppner here of Keppner Boxing. If you have any questions or comments for Keith, or any feedback at all as we're having this discussion, feel free to just comment below the video. We can share it on screen. We'd love to have your participation in this episode. Keith, before we're about to hit the tilt here, where we're going to talk about not just business as usual, but COVID-19. But before we do that, there's one other area I just wanted to explore here. I certainly don't advocate dropping out, but I know that for me, I dropped out of college for several years, and I think that experience really shaped a lot of who I am. For me, it wasn't physical health challenges. I was experiencing depression for the first time in my life. I had to do a hardship withdrawal. And that really shaped a lot of me personally, and how I approached things as an entrepreneur years later, and still how I approach things today. When you did drop out of Clark Central due to the health issues that you were facing, do you feel like that has shaped a lot of the way that you approach things now?
Yeah, 100%. It's like the really corny and cliche old-timey quote, but it's true, is that turning a disadvantage into an advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find it real funny. It's like, for instance, we're officially going to market with our franchise in a couple months. We're about to sign our first franchise now, actually, but through that process, we have like a team right now of like 16 people with our franchise consulting and marketing organization, and they're all college graduates. And it was a funny time for Lissa, because Lissa, she dropped out of college as well, and I'm a high school dropout. It's like I joke I have the equivalent of probably a fifth grade education as far as formal education goes. But of course I'm self-educated. But yeah, that all those things again, it makes you better and it makes you stronger if you choose to. And of course, there's the two types of people, right? Or there's many types of people, but there's certain people that they thrive a little bit off of making their own path, and those people tend to be more entrepreneurial. There's people that thrive a little bit more when they have more structure and maybe taking a second position or a third position. And so those people sometimes do a little bit better with school, or depending what you're getting into. I just know that, for instance, man, it's like, I've gotten into running so hard recently, and it's awesome to see you jumping back into it. But man, let me tell you, like, an example of that I feel is exemplified with me as an entrepreneur and me as a business owner is that, man, like at the end of like the 2 half marathons I've run and whatnot, I just hit this point that's just like, it's such an amazing feeling, but it's almost like getting in touch with your pain and suffering from those times, which make you strong. And I just repeat to myself, like, I remember. And it just gives me this boost of like, I remember dropping out, feeling like I was less than other people,
Right.
and being sick and just all those things. And so using that as fire, man, it's like Marcus Aurelius said, like, be like a fire, that the more things are thrown at it, the brighter that flame goes, man. And I believe if you reframe life in that perspective, then you can truly find a benefit, you know?
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there that resonates with. I know it resonates with me. I see we have a comment here from Lissa Keppner, who shared, she said, I dropped out twice, and I believe that is
Out of
a winky
college.
face emoji. So,
Yeah, she dropped out twice out of college. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. But I think everything we've talked about at this point is going to really come back into our discussion now that we're about to tilt to COVID, because these topics of health, resiliency, overcoming obstacles, all these are things that are part of the recipe of facing this moment. So, Keith, I like to start by just talking about the chronology of it. And by that, I mean, every person I talk to, every elected official, every business owner, every community leader has a slightly different story on the way that COVID first came into their lives, when it became real, when it started affecting their business, when they had to really face it head on. Can you talk a little bit about how COVID-19 came into play when it comes to Keppner Boxing?
Yeah. So when we initially start hearing about it and everything, I think like most people, you tend to underplay, what could happen or the severity of it. And and so getting further, I don't want to say my actual time wrong, but in the weeks build up to there actually being a official shelter in place put on by Gertz. I remember seeing M3, good friends of ours, Nick and Matt, wonderful business owners. I saw them make the decision to suspend in-person training. And essentially, kind of when I saw a couple people I respected making moves on it, I knew I had to really take it seriously, because we initially were like, okay, we are going to like sanitize everything, we're going to clean everything and everything else. But then when we saw other people we respected making some decisions on it, we knew that we had to make decisions. So, man, we, over the space of just a couple days, went ahead and suspended sessions. And we did that probably about a week out before that became a mandatory shelter in place. And and it was a process of, because I used to be involved in the political process a little bit. I was like an alternate state delegate. And so I used to be really wrapped up in the news. And over the course of Keppner Boxing, I've not, and been focused on purely like growing myself, the people I work with, the business, everything else. And because I felt like that's what I could have most control over and benefit the most. And so it was funny when all this came back up, I kind of fell back into that cycle. I think like most of us did, of watching the news all the time and everything else. But what's really cool is that throughout that process, it reminded me, my father also taught statistics in college. And so he taught me some basic principles of statistics. So taught me to have some scientific method, to be a good fact checker. And it changed so quickly, and there were so many different things from day to day. It was like, let me check the date on what I'm reading, because man, like I'm sure you saw so many people shared information, articles, and you look at it, it's like, dude, that's 3 weeks old, that's behind.
So I do remember seeing that your facility did seem to respond quicker than some others, and I know that other facilities, other gyms in the Athens area health facility centers, I know you mentioned M3 is acting quickly. I know that a lot of the yoga studios seem to act quickly. It seemed like there were certain groups that acted quickly, but there were some gyms that were still open, I mean, right up until they were forced to close. And some of them who then opened back up the second they could. Can you talk about, in your industry, even though I know you're a very distinct representative of your industry, but can you talk about some of the things you noticed within your industry, some things that maybe you observed, maybe some things that frustrated you? Is there anything like that that comes to mind?
100%. 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
I saw again, and you see this with a lot of different people, right? Of all spectrums and different backgrounds, everything else. But I saw specifically some people in this industry, the fitness industry, not being the most thoughtful and not doing their best to step outside of their own needs to look upon what would be the best for everybody, which then affects them down the road, right? So a little bit longer thinking, because I can make an argument for them of why it is beneficial for them to actually help, the community and everything else, and to do those things instead of trying to be me initially. And so I just saw a lot of sloppy thinking, a lot of people. We're all subjected to cognitive biases, and even us that are try to be aware of it, we all are. But I saw a lot of this bias coming into play of, if exercise or gyms, those should be essential services and things like that. And it's like, well, to be frank, I mean, like, you don't need to go to a gym. You don't need to go anywhere. You need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need your medicine if you're on medicine, but that's essential services, not going to the gym. I'm sorry, it's not. And so that really disturbed me a lot. And it disturbed me, I think, more because I am a business owner, and this is how my family is supported. We don't do anything else except have Keppner Boxing. So here we are willing, and we're doing it, we did it intelligently, but we're willing to, close the doors and basically reformulate our business and go online live sessions and just do a bunch of other things to make it work because of what the projections were and what the evidence showed at that time, and still may show to have been maybe the best best measure to be taken, especially, at that time. And what's funny, it's easy to go back and say, oh, well, you should have done this, you should have done that. Well, yeah, come on, who can do that? But the second point is, it's like, if quarantine worked, it's one of those things that everyone afterwards would say, oh, we'll see, it wasn't that bad. Right. And then if it didn't work, then it's a disaster. And you're like, oh, well, we should have quarantined. So,
Keith, you brought up some of the challenges. I mean, every entrepreneur, one of the things that's really come up a lot in this discussion, not just today, but in general, has been the empathy we have to have for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are taking this risk. It's something that weighs on them a great deal. And now, for folks that are in the fitness world, they're having to make this awful choice between protecting their clients and protecting their ability to continue paying their bills. And that's really tough. Still, have you been surprised at the overall reaction from the fitness community when you consider that fitness is supposed to focus on health? I mean, I think a lot of fitness professionals are supposed to be concerned with health. Were you surprised at the way things played out, or not surprised?
I would say I was surprised at some specific individuals' perspectives of the situation. But I was not surprised on what you're addressing, because without trying to gaslight or throw a whole bunch of garbage all over the fitness community, or just what fitness industry can be in general. Well, let's what it is. It's two main things, right? It's movement, which is exercise, and it's oftentimes dietary things or supplementation. There's a portion of that industry which is largely unfounded, which largely is just a waste of money. It really is. And that's why, as a business, we've never, don't get me wrong, if you have certain health conditions and everything else or deficiencies, you need to take certain vitamins and minerals and whatnot. But other than that, you need to eat healthy. And so there's a lot of these quick fixes, a lot of these kind of bait and switches. And it's something that I remember starting a facility back in 2013. It was one reason that kind of held me back from getting into it. I worried that, well, is that the only way that you can succeed? Do you have to have these insane fat loss challenges where you're going to encourage people to starve themselves? Are you going to stuff supplements down people's throats? and things like that? Or are you going to actually try to give them? And so that's where the industry has changed a little bit, I think, because that got so extreme there for a while. But there's still obviously people that come from, they were raised like that. And so they can't help but kind of just go that way. But I think what surprised me the most were just certain individuals and them not taking a step back, looking at the data and trying to look at it objectively. And that's what I think that I found that's the most surprising.
Yeah. Keith, I'm going to, as I mentioned to you before we went on air, about halfway through the program, we like to thank our annual sponsors. I'm going to do that here in just a second. But what I would like to just tease, I'm going to share a question that just appeared in our comment section. I think it's a great question that you really have some interesting answers to. I know from what I've seen online. But I'm going to go and share the question with you. And then when we get back from thanking our annual sponsors, I'd love to hear your answer. So Francis
Perfect.
Oliver just shared the following question. She said, how have you kept clients engaged and connected to your business while temporarily shuttered? And I know that's something that I've seen you really develop and grow quickly, a lot of innovation, a lot of recalibration. I know that some of your early efforts
still using.
inspired. Yeah. And some of those early efforts inspired things like this live cast. So I really look forward to chewing on that with you here in just a minute. So Francis, we're going to answer your question in just 1 second. Keith, if you'll bear with me one moment, we're just going to thank our annual sponsors. And so I'm going to bring up the following image on screen. So the names that you see on screen right now, for those of you that are tuned in, these are our annual sponsors. These are the folks that, thanks to their generous donation, our 501c3 nonprofit is still operating. And so if you see a business type represented on screen, whether it's DSI Construction, Arcolab Architectural Collaborative, whether it's Heirloom, the restaurant, any of these business types that you can support, please support them. And we also, you can see we have some individuals that support us as sponsors as well. I want to emphasize that it's great to be 52 years old as a nonprofit, but I promise you our bills still come every month. And so to every donor and member, we want you to know how much it means to have your support. So if you'd like to become a sponsor and continue to support us, especially during these uncertain and difficult times, you can visit historicathens.com to find out more. Also, if you're just somebody who wants to support us as an individual or as a family, there are memberships at that level that begin at only $5 a month. I promise you, they make a difference, a big difference. And you can find out how to do that at historicathens.com. We really appreciate each and every one of our members. The image I'm bringing up on screen right now is the list of our interviewees for the live cast you're now viewing. You can see there's 55 names there. Keith Keppner is today. On Monday, on Memorial Day, we really appreciate Dr. Zernona Thomas, the acting superintendent of Clark County School District, is making some time for us on Memorial Day to talk to us. Then Commissioner Mike Hamby, then Daniel Epting of Epting Events, then Katie Williams of the CVB, and then Dusty Gannon, Dustin, who is a paramedic and firefighter, who's obviously facing some unique challenges right now. So this is a list of our names and our sponsors. If you want to see a zoomable version of this list, just check back a little bit in our Facebook feed and you'll find it. And then last but not least, before we get back to Keith, I want to just display this image. Part of our operation with Historic Athens is the Athens Welcome Center. Since it is not currently safe to operate the Athens Welcome Center, our staff is currently finding different ways to welcome you to Athens. And for those of you that are out there walking and running, guide you to different unique locations around Athens. So the list you see here is the 2 o'clock live cast that they're hosting each day. So as soon as this episode ends, you can go right over to the Facebook page for the Athens Welcome Center and get unique tours and workshops. Today, Interim Director Michelle Wynn will be giving you a live tour of Old North Campus, and you can tune in. It's interactive. You can ask questions. So we hope that at 2 o'clock, you'll tune in over there. So with that said, thanks to Keith for letting us do that. I'm bringing him back on screen. And then the last thing I'll say here on the sponsorship note is we once again want to thank our weekly sponsor this week, which is the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce, not only for their excellent work they've been doing in the community through webinars and sessions, but also by supporting this program as a financial sponsor for this week. So thanks to the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. All right, so Keith, getting back to this question, I'm going to bring it up on screen for our viewers. So Francis asked, how have you kept clients engaged and connected to your business while temporarily shuttered? Can you talk about that, Keith?
Yeah, 100%. So when we initially shuttered, what I did was I have an online training program that we normally sell, and I just gave that for free to all of our clients. And that's the time to do things like that. And then because again, you can be penny wise and pound foolish as an entrepreneur, and so it's much better to take care of your people and invest in them, as it were, versus try to anyway. So that we did that initially, and then I had all my coaches produce different training videos every day that we sent out to them. And then within about a week and a half, we launched on the Zoom and utilized that like so many people have, and done a wonderful job at it. And so now it's been a permanent arm of our business, 7 days a week of live sessions. There are 45-minute sessions you can do anywhere. And so it's really cool to be able to design workouts and training that incorporate boxing and boxing technique along with conditioning that you can do at home with no equipment. So what's been really cool with that is, we live in a college town, right? So we have so many wonderful clients that come to us for a few years and then they move on. So we actually had a couple people join back in, and now they are clients again. So it's really cool.
Keith, I remember you were one of the first that I saw in my feed go through those steps. And what I loved about it was it really kind of pulled back the curtain and it let folks see your training staff, how they worked. I remember there was even sometimes footage that demonstrated your staff in the process of recording their videos or going live, where you could kind of see behind the scenes. It seemed really important, not only that you provide information to your clients, but also that you were trying to demonstrate to the Athens community how a business could pull off something like this. Was that in the back of your mind, that you were trying to kind of inspire others to take these steps?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where initially, I think for the first week, we just did the workouts on Facebook Live. So essentially everyone could see them and see what that was about. But yeah, and that's where I've had the fortune of, like, you had your nice comment that you said earlier, Tommy, about kind of what we've built up over the past couple of years, where, I'm fortunate enough to have really good entrepreneurs and business owners from around Athens and outside counties that, repeatedly would ask me for advice during these situations, and I'd be able to tell them what we're doing, which was working and which wasn't working.
Yeah. You mentioned the different models that are out there for different facilities and how they approach health. One thing I want to get at here that I think really manifested itself in this moment that we're talking about. Years and years ago, well before we met, I remember reading once that the model for most large gyms is you sign up people as quickly as you can, especially during those times of year where people are feeling uncertain about themselves. Maybe they ate too much over the holidays, the New Year's resolution time. You sign up as many people as you can. And then a shocking percentage of those people just stop coming, but they have difficulty accepting that their workout journey is temporarily over, and so they don't cancel. And so a lot of gyms sustain themselves off having these massive membership rolls that aren't actually showing up to the facility. When I trained with you, there was a period of time in my life, I guess it was about 3 years ago, where between the campaign I was running, things that were going on at school, things that were changing in my life, we were preparing to welcome our daughter into our life. I stopped being able to go. And what I remember was a very different environment, which is, I remember you kind of reaching out to me and giving me a very polite level of hell for not showing up. And I got the sense that it wasn't just because we knew each other. I got the sense that any of your clients would have gotten that kind of outreach. It's so different. It's you notice when people aren't showing up. You want them to show up. Can you talk a little bit about that philosophy of quality over quantity, and B, how that quality over quantity approach changed how you approached COVID-19?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, so a like that style and that model, it's something. This is why that model's become more popular over the years. Various different types of it, but really incorporating it into a boxing aspect is what we do uniquely. Yeah, essentially, a lot of the certain fitness facilities will have 10,000, 20,000 people on the books. I remember some people that were managers and owners of some of these facilities have bragged to me that they have thousands on their books, but they can't support thousands. And the idea is, well, if the payment is small enough, you won't notice it, and then you won't care. And then if you make it a little bit troubling to cancel, which, don't get me wrong, like with any gym that's a well-run business, you do have to actually do something to cancel. You can't just like ghost, but still they make it purposely a little difficult because heck, is it easier to just pay $10 a month and maybe go than to cancel? So anyway, so there's that whole thing. But then the philosophy of where, like, Tommy, when you train with us, and everyone knows that trains with us, that we have about 300 or so members, and we know everyone's name. And we call everybody by name. And that's part of became one of our core principles that we've introduced over the past couple of years, of that it's like everyone knows your name and supports your success. And that's where we've been happy to build that into something which we've been able to replicate as we've grown. So it's not just all me doing it now, it's our whole team doing it. And then also as well, what's so cool is organically, the clients, it's like, for instance, I've had people tell me this when they go to kind of general exercise classes, and everyone just like before the class starts, they sit there on their phone and they kind of ignore each other, and then they do their workout and then they leave. Whereas with us, it's like this really cool community of people talking before and everything else. So you end up feeling accountable to them. You end up you like seeing those people, and those people wonder where you've been for a week if you've been gone. So that's that.
Yeah. And so when you think about how that manifested itself with COVID-19, it seems like and I'm not trying to project here, but it seems
Sure.
not only were you trying to keep your business afloat, you did have this more personal level of care for your clients. So you were also just trying to provide services for them. Is that a correct analysis of what was happening there?
100%. Like, for instance, we had a lot of people that were, I don't want to mention any specifics, but we had a lot of situations. Well, I'll mention one group that, like our Parkinson's group, like we have some of those clients, and, just, we gave them access to the Zooms and everything else, didn't even charge them, because that's one of our community outreach things that we do. But there were a lot of other ways we did it as well. And it was a thing of taking care of them. And what's funny though, like, Tommy, when, your time in politics and everything else, is that you always have people with different opinions. And some people get annoyed that maybe you're not operating, or maybe they don't understand that, like, hey, there actually is value here in doing, let's say, the live sessions at home. And so, there's always those things. And I guess I want to mention with that note that if you don't have anybody that criticizes you, and if you don't have anyone that has a small problem with you from time to time, you're not doing anything good.
Keith, I know that exercise is an important way of treating anxiety, depression, a lot of mental health challenges. I know, speaking personally, it's one of the reasons I've started running so much again. I had already started running in early February, but I really picked it up once this started, because you just need that outlet to get out of the house. Have you considered, for your clients, some of them probably really needed or craved the routine of going to your facility, of getting that coaching from a coach who knows not just their name, but what they're facing from a fitness challenge at that point. How have you kept it personal, and how have you worked to continue to have that kind of relief for your clients?
Well, I tell you specifically, this has been cool with this. I mean, cool is not the right word, but it's been a blessing in some ways with the crisis, because me as a business owner, and as essentially as the head coach, it made me completely come back down to the base. Meaning, like you mentioned when you were with us years ago, I'm the one reaching out to a lot of people personally,
Right.
making sure and touching base with them, and also honestly giving them props for them staying consistent, for them doing what they're doing. Again, that's something that we're really big about, and I'm really big about as a person. Is we all know the corny cheerleader type trainer that's like, man, I wish I had a body like you, and you're like, dude, no, you don't. Or like they'll just say things that are thoughtless. And so that positive, sincere, but professional way of interacting with people is really what we got a chance to do. And that's where it's cool though, because it really grounded us back. And let me tell you too, it really, and I hope this comes across the right way, but
Yeah.
This was the best time that this could have happened for our business, meaning that all the work we've put in over the years to get things structured the right way, to have an amazing team and staff, and also the amazing clients that have stuck with us or have just come on board over the past few months, or even some in the past weeks. It's been really a good time for us for this to happen. Meaning, like, if this would have happened to us back when we first moved into Baxter Street, we might have been crushed. The technology was different. We were different people. It's been a lot of, and that's where kind of the final thing on that thing I just want to say is that it's the idea and the perspective with business of being an entrepreneur that I love so much, and that this is why I'm so grateful for what I do and what we have a blessing to do, is that it's not the pursuit of business, which is the point. It's who you become in the process. So the person I've had to become as a leader, as a more organized person, as a more giving person, as a more forgiving person, is it's been a real blessing, and specifically in these tough times.
Yeah. Keith, your current location faces, by the way, I live in a historic neighborhood, word to history, and that's a great thing, but it means I'm by the train line. So the train is going to go by in a second, and it is going to be very loud. I can already tell. So to our viewers, that as an added bonus to this program is you get to hear train sounds. Keith, your current location is in the same shopping center as the AMC movie theater. And typically that parking lot is full. Folks are going to see movies all the time. I know several friends that have that membership where they can see an unlimited number of movies. But these days, you're probably looking at that parking lot and seeing tumbleweeds blow by.
It's overgrown.
Yeah. So as a business owner, how surreal is that to look at something as large as a giant movie theater and just day in and day out see no business there?
Oh yeah, it's definitely is surreal, and it's a very powerful message of the impermanence of any situation, whether it be economical or business or anything else. It's like a lot of the people that talk about the changing with the economy of like certain types of jobs and things like that going. Essentially, COVID was an accelerator to that, and I think we're seeing that.
And how, we're at a time now where, especially in Georgia, more so than almost anywhere else in the country, we're having this discussion about reopening and getting back out there.
Yeah.
And I know you've made several posts about your feelings on that subject. Let me ask you personally, and as a business owner, what are your thoughts on reopening?
Yes. So I want to frame it first by saying what I understood as the point of shelter in place. So to me, the most valid point of shelter in place that I believe was the supported scientific reason was to flatten the curve, right? And where that becomes a dramatic issue of where you must do that, especially when in a situation that you don't know a lot about, is to ensure that the hospitals do not get overrun and it doesn't destroy that system. So that therefore you have people dying that aren't able to get ventilators and everything else. So under that frame, I believe that it actually is not a bad idea to slowly reopen. Now, I will say with that, something that I am personally not happy about with people is their inconsideration of other people, meaning the amount of people that during even quarantine times or official shelter in place times, but these times as well, that, for instance, choose not to wear a mask when they're just walking around. And it's one of those things that I can understand where they're coming from. We can understand that, they think, well, I'm not high risk. But of course, remembering that, hey, you can be a carrier and not show symptoms, right? And so it's been an interesting time to really reveal how thoughtful people are. And that's not me trying to down on anyone that's not doing this, but it's just simply that you have to really think deeply about your actions and take personal responsibility. Something that hit me hard, though, with this whole situation and where we are now with slowly reopening. Our facility is reopened to about 20% capacity. But we all wear masks, all the coaches, everything else, and yada, yada, yada. But is that as a country, and as a human race, but also as a country, what we have been through and what the people of this world have been through and going through right now is so far worse than anything that anyone is asking or suggesting us to do in these situations. And so that's where I take a very strong stand on that. As someone who has, I'll just throw this out there, as someone who has really studied the Constitution very vividly, and is a big believer in that document, people citing the First Amendment, saying and using that as a reason why the shelter in place is unconstitutional. I want to remind all of them that the Second Amendment protects us against Congress having a bill or passing a law that we must shelter in place, but not against your state and local government.
Interesting.
So I just want to say that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't want us to run too far over, but one other thing I just want to say that came to mind here is, I was in New York a month before and a month after 9/11. And my family's from New Jersey. New York trips were not uncommon. The first one was just natural. The second one was to actually go up and visit New York afterwards. And one of the things I really remember is after that loss of life, after that challenge and that crisis and that tragedy, how it changed the city and people in the city. And so I remember being on the subway, gosh, it was like, less than a month afterwards, ashes still falling from the sky. And I remember people just spontaneously talking to tourists and saying, do you need directions? How can I help you? And this is not a New York thing, not a New York thing to do, but just kind of going out of their way to be helpful and kind and kind of sense this shared duty to one another. It's so hard not to contrast that with the way I'm seeing people face this thing where, a couple days ago, I was out running. I know you're out running a lot, and I'm noticing already the way that people are hardening to this and the way that temporary note in the air that was present during the initial days of COVID is fading. So the example I gave some people this morning was, I was running on Prince the other day. I was making room by heading towards the right of the sidewalk, trying to get over. There was a group facing me that there were three that were walking. All but one of them got to the far left. I pulled up my mask and just asked for some room. And one person just very deliberately walked in the center, of the sidewalk, refused to move, and just yelled at me, "You're outside," like kind of get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing more and more of that. Uh, do you have any sense as someone who's lived through both 9/11 and now COVID-19? Do you have any sense on why things are playing out the way they are, why people are reacting to this the way they are?
I would say that how long did it take for the germ theory to come? Right?
Yeah. Right.
It took a very long time for people to understand that. How long did it take for them to understand war and battle? It's been around since the beginning of the human race, and so and even animalistic. But so it's a much more visceral thing. When you have a invisible enemy, it's much more. It's easy to forget about it. It's easier to underplay it, and it's easy to intellectualize it. And again, the idea, like, with yourself, is that even if someone doesn't believe that maybe your level of concern or safety is warranted, they must understand where it's coming from. I would say, though, that it's been a very interesting situation. Again, just on the whole note of
Yeah.
that, I believe very strongly in the scientific method, and we have to approach everything we hear initially with a level of skepticism, but don't let that lead you down the wrong rabbit hole and into an echo chamber. And I think that's where a lot of us are. It's like,
Right.
for fun, I watched the Plandemic movie for fun, and it's a very compelling thing. But then when you actually go back and try to fact check anything in it, it's
Right.
all pretty unsubstantiated. And remember, I had chronic Lyme disease for many years. That was something which was and still some people call it a controversial illness. And man, I was in Athens, Georgia, trying to find an answer, my parents, for why their son was sick. And I would have doctors like laugh at us in the face that, oh, well, you don't have Lyme disease because it's not in Georgia. And so I know what it's like to not be a part of the mainstream,
Right.
but you gotta really think these things through. And again, like I said, though, too, is like, it's one thing if someone approaches you with caution, like for instance you're doing, and if someone disagrees with that and thinks that's over caution,
Right.
why is that offensive, right?
Well, that's what I was getting at. So thanks for getting to that. I'm going to show one comment, ask one non-programmed question, then we'll wrap things up with our final questions of the day. So Jeremy Field just shared a good comment that made me laugh, so I wanted to share it
Yeah.
with the group here. So he said, "Good stuff, Keith and Tommy. I've also got back into running. I hate it, but it's good for most of my body." And I do. For any of us that run a lot on our knees or hips or ankles, I had to laugh at most of my body. Everything you do is hard on part of you somewhere. Uh, my my uh, my question to you, Keith, I guess my last one here, before we get into the wrap up is, Keith, a lot of the folks that come to your gym, you get people from all walks of life, and because your gym has gradually become kind of a must-do experience in the Athens area, and because so many people want to be seen going to it or post online that they've gone to it, I imagine you get people that are coming to you for all kinds of reasons. They're going to come to you with all kinds of different bias, and as you mentioned, some folks, there's a whole spectrum of belief right now on germ theory and how to face this. Are you anticipating? Are you anticipating having to provide some education to some of your clients? Are you anticipating that you're going to have, already I see a lot of the college students that have come back, despite it being an online only semester. We're seeing all these college students come back. They're certainly acting with less care than maybe some of the other folks I had seen prior to that. Are you anticipating
Yeah.
having to provide some tough love or some limitations or some boundaries or some expectations, not only for your staff, but for the people walking through the doors?
Yeah. Fortunately, that hasn't been a problem yet. Besides, again, kind of people without just thinking, they'll like get a little too close to you,
Yeah.
type thing. But yeah, fortunately, like I said, the staff has been really wonderful with it, and it's one of those things that I think we're blessed from the culture we have, where even if somebody doesn't agree with it, they respect it. And as you know, Tommy, as someone that's trained with us, that it's like with all of our principles and what we do and how we treat each other, it becomes either you kind of you mold into it, you find your place in it, and if you don't, I think part of good leadership is to make the cuts when you have to, and
Right.
to I think people maybe know from back in the day, but I mean, I still do it if I had to. Like last year, I had to ask a member to stop being a member because of how they treated somebody else in the facility. And so, yeah, so I mean, definitely not afraid to bring out the tough love. It's a spectrum that, yeah, and I think through showing strong positivity and love and understanding, that leaves it, that puts you in a really good position for when it is necessary to be
Right.
a little tougher.
Yep. All right, Keith. let's yeah, certainly I if there's anyone who I have confidence will be able to lower the boom if they have to, it's you, you and Lissa. So, all right. So, our last few questions here as we wrap up today's program. Uh, so Keith, if quarantine was over tomorrow, you could go anywhere. Let's assume every business was open again. How would you spend your day? What are the places you miss?
Ooh, well, let me jump on a couple ones real fast.
Yeah.
So, um, my daughter loves the Clark Park, so I want
Mm.
to definitely go there, and Bear Hollow. And I've been wanting to go to I think it's Active Climb by
Mhm.
Chase Street.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and I was getting ready to go there kind of before this happened, and then so it's all places around my daughter, but she loves the mall. She loves the mall, like, and so I have fond memories of being a little kid at this mall. But yeah, she loves the mall. She's 3 years old, but yeah, so we would definitely go there. Those are probably the big places I'm missing. But you know, I'll probably, since it's outside, all the other places are outside. So I guess like where I proposed to my wife, like in the UGA gardens or something like that.
Oh, that's great. Any food that you miss?
Well, man, the curbside,
That's right.
pickup's
Yeah.
been awesome.
Yeah.
One of man, we've been hitting up Blind Pig every now and again. It's funny because like before all this hit, I was in my mind, like before any of this hit, I was in my mind, I was like, if I'm serious about what I'm doing, I was calling out somebody else
Yeah.
I kind of mentor about being serious about saving money and putting it to where it has use and whatnot. So we cut out like hundreds of dollars out of a grocery bill and whatnot, from Stop Eating Out and all this other stuff. But
Right.
when this all comes about, it's like, well, we need to support local business. So
Right.
Taste of India, Blind Pig, Siri Thai, a few other places we've been hitting up. So yeah, so it has been quite an issue.
Yeah. Curbside's been great. Um,
Yeah.
so Keith, part of what we do is historic preservation. We've been thinking a lot right now because we're not only facing COVID-19, we're facing a potential recession, a recession that seems more and more real every day. A lot of times when you come out of a recession, people are so eager to build that formerly safe historic spaces can become quickly endangered. Uh, do you what are some historic places that you hope we're able to preserve in this community? What are some of your favorite historic places in Athens, Georgia?
Well, I love the square. So I spent
Mhm.
a lot of time down there when I was younger, and I love the square a lot. And then I was actually, because I was running by it the Sunday, um, definitely the. It's bad of me that I don't know what to call it, but the church that REM practiced in, that steeple.
Oh yeah, yeah, the steeple, the famous REM steeple, and then you were referring to
Yep.
College Square earlier in downtown. Yeah, two
Yeah.
critical places. Hard to imagine Athens without them. My last question, Keith, is that this interview, along with the other 55 total interviews, is going to be submitted to local libraries and research institutions. It's very possible that someone could be looking back at this interview 100 years from now. If so, what would you say to that person? What do you want them to know about Athens, Georgia at this moment?
I mean that's a powerful thing. Um, them as someone who has perspective of what comes next with this situation,
Yeah.
we'll see it in a certain light. But this town, what I love about this town, and what I think is important to be known about this town in this time, and in this time, is that I believe it is certainly a town with a heart, a big heart, and it has a very obviously just a strong creative vein and a supportive vein, and just it's very entrepreneurial, and that's why I'm blessed to have started my entrepreneurial journey here, and
Mhm.
so many people are, and I believe will. And during these times, these hard times, I know that it will show that certain people will either start their ventures or grow their ventures much bigger and create a greater, more positive impact during it.
Yeah. Thank you for that encouraging perspective. And you're right. Yes, the folks that are viewing this 100 years from now, they're gonna have a little bit more clarity about what comes next. Let's hope that it's a good chapter in the story. Francis Oliver commented in the section that we were talking about St. Mary's steeple. Thank you, Francis.
Thank
The REM steeple. And then last but not least, Keith, if someone after hearing this conversation today, is interested in getting involved at Keppner Boxing, can you tell them where they should go online, how they should get plugged in?
Sure. Yeah, let me just do a quick old plug for everything. So you can just go to our website right away, request more information. We offer a free session for everyone. We offer a free Zoom session from your house if you want. If you're comfortable with coming in, like I said, all of our coaches wear masks and everything else, and we keep social distancing. So we'll do our best to take care of you and keep you safe. But if you feel comfortable, you can do either one. And then, or just message us on any social media like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and then make sure you tune into local radio, Bulldog 93.3. I'm on there Monday through Friday in the morning with my spots on philosophy, inspiration, motivation, all that. And then also every Saturday at 10 a.m. I have 10 minutes to win. And like Tommy mentioned, he was on one of the shows years ago, man. I've been doing it for like 4 years now. It's really cool.
So time has flown by. I've shared the URL to KeppnerBoxing.com in the comments section. Anybody who wants to, I encourage you to click through and find out more. Keith, it's time for us to get off the air, but I do want to say thank you so much, not only for being here, but for your perspective and your leadership. To everyone that tuned in today, we will be back tomorrow. We'll be back on Monday at 1 o'clock. I know Monday's Memorial Day, but we're still ticking. And we'll be talking to Zernona Thomas, Dr. Thomas of Clark County School District. Also, if you took this on your lunch break and you're still finishing your sandwich, you want more historic programming, you can head over right now to the Athens Welcome Center Facebook page for more programming that started at 2 o'clock. We're actually doing a tour of Old North Campus, not too far from where Keith told us he proposed to list us. So pretty good overlap. So thank you to everyone. Keith and I are going to go off air. Be safe. Enjoy your weekend. Treat it like a weekend. Set some boundaries. And we'll be back on Monday. Thank you so much. Take care.